The city was silent, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of fear. Buildings stood tall, their glass windows broken like eyes that once watched but now were blind. The streets were empty, except for the whisper of wind that carried dust and old paper across cracked concrete. Lights from alien machines blinked in the sky, moving like cold stars that had fallen too close to Earth. Humanity was almost gone. The world did not belong to humans anymore. Everyone had believed that the fight was already over. The enemy had come fast, their voices echoing across every screen, every device, every satellite. They had spoken in unison, as if one mind controlled them all, and their words carried no doubt, no hesitation. The age of humanity is finished. Erase them. People had cried, shouted, prayed, but their voices were swallowed by the endless call of those strange beings. And yet, in the shadow of ruined towers, one man still breathed. He was not a soldier, not a leader, not someone whose name was written in history books. His clothes were torn, his face covered with dust, his hands trembling. But his eyes, dark and steady, carried something that no alien voice could erase: hope. His name was Elias. Elias had watched everything fall. He had seen families disappear in bright flashes, seen great armies reduced to ash, seen cities burn until the night sky glowed red. He had hidden, running through the bones of the old world, carrying nothing but scraps of food and the memory of a promise he once made, to never give up, no matter how strong the darkness became. The aliens never searched for him directly. Why would they? To them, humanity was finished. Their machines swept through cities like hunters, scanning, listening, but they were not perfect. Elias learned how to move when the wind was strong, how to breathe slowly so machines would not hear, how to wait in silence until danger passed. He became a shadow, living between moments, unseen and forgotten. But tonight, something was different. The alien voice came again, rising across the broken city. The machines hummed louder, their lights sharper, their shadows longer. Elias pressed his back against a wall, his heart pounding, as the voice rolled over him like thunder. Erase them. Erase them. Humanity is no more. Elias closed his eyes. He wanted to believe he was the last, but deep inside he knew it could not be true. There had to be others. Someone, somewhere, was still alive. The aliens wanted silence, but silence was never complete. Humanity was stubborn. Humanity always found a way. He moved carefully through the darkness, stepping over shattered glass, avoiding pools of strange liquid that glowed faintly blue. He had discovered long ago that touching it burned the skin. He had also discovered something else: the machines were not perfect. They followed orders, but they did not understand everything. Elias had found an old radio once, hidden inside a broken car. He had repaired it with his bare hands, fingers bleeding, and when he turned it on, he heard static, and then a whisper. That whisper had given him reason to move forward. It was faint, almost lost in the noise, but it was human. A woman's voice, broken and tired, speaking words he could not forget. If you can hear this, you are not alone. He carried those words like fire inside his chest. Now, as the machines searched the city, Elias held onto that memory. Maybe the woman was gone, maybe the signal was old, maybe he had imagined it, but he could not let go. The enemy believed humanity was finished. They believed their voice was the only voice left. But Elias knew one thing the aliens could not understand. Humans were not strong because of weapons or numbers. Humans were strong because of something deeper. They endured. They dreamed. They fought even when the battle seemed impossible. A strange hum filled the air. Elias froze, his body pressed flat to the ground. A machine floated above, its sharp light cutting across the street. Its sensors turned, scanning, searching. For a moment, Elias felt the heat of the beam on his arm. He did not move. He barely breathed. The machine hovered, paused, and then drifted away, as if dismissing him like an insect not worth crushing. When the sound faded, Elias crawled forward, heart racing. He had learned long ago that fear was not something to escape. Fear was a tool. Fear kept him sharp, kept him alive. The night stretched on, and Elias found himself at the edge of an old subway entrance. The stairs descended into darkness, broken signs still hanging above. He hesitated. Underground was dangerous. Sometimes the machines entered tunnels, and sometimes worse things waited there, things twisted by alien hands. But Elias also knew that the subway was where he had first caught the radio signal. He gripped the rusted railing, his knuckles white. He could turn back, vanish into the ruins, hide another day. But if he did, then he was already dead. The world said humanity was erased. The enemy believed no one remained. But Elias, one man in the shadows, refused to accept it. Step by step, he walked into the dark, chasing a voice that might be real or might be nothing more than hope. Behind him, the machines hummed, their lights slicing across the city like knives. Above, the alien voice echoed once more. Erase them. Humanity is gone. But in the depths below, where the air was heavy and the silence thicker than night, another sound waited. A faint crackle, a whisper breaking through static, a human voice calling into the void. Elias froze, his breath caught in his throat. The whisper grew clearer, fragile but alive. If you can hear me, we are still here. And in that moment, Elias knew the story was not over. Humanity was not finished. Not yet. The static grew louder as Elias pressed the small radio against his ear. The voice was weak, cutting in and out, but it was real. A human voice. His chest tightened. He had not heard another person in months, maybe years. Time had become strange in the ruins. Days and nights blended, and survival was the only measure of time. But this was something new. The whisper came again, trembling, soft. We are still here. We are still. The signal cracked, then vanished into silence. Elias gritted his teeth. He wanted to shout into the radio, to answer, but he dared not. The machines listened. He had seen them tear apart signals before, following them like wolves. If he sent a reply, the enemy might find the woman before he did. He could not risk that. He stuffed the radio into his pack and moved deeper into the subway. The air was cold and smelled of rust and water. His boots splashed in shallow puddles as he walked, every sound echoing like thunder in the empty tunnels. Darkness pressed close, broken only by the dim glow of his flashlight. He remembered the days when these tunnels carried thousands of people, rushing, laughing, living. Now they were tombs. Shadows clung to the walls, and strange marks scratched into the concrete told stories of those who had tried to hide here before. Some survived for a while. Most did not. Elias kept moving, his ears sharp for the hum of machines. Sometimes they sent smaller drones into tunnels, thin and spider-like, crawling on ceilings with red eyes that glowed in the dark. He had fought one once with a broken pipe, smashing its head until it sparked and twitched on the ground. He still remembered the smell of burned metal and the sound of its last screech. Now, every drip of water made him tense. Every shift of air made his muscles stiffen. He could not afford mistakes. After what felt like hours, he reached an old control room. Rusted doors hung open, and broken monitors lined the walls. Dust covered everything, but the room gave him shelter. He set his pack down, his hands shaking as he pulled out the radio again. He turned the dial slowly, carefully. Static hissed, sharp and endless. Then, for a moment, the voice returned. To anyone who can hear this, we are not gone. We are waiting. Do not give up. Elias's breath caught. Waiting. Where? Who was she? His mind raced with questions he could not ask. He felt the ache of loneliness stronger than ever. For so long, he had believed he was alone. But if she was real, then maybe others were too. Maybe humanity was hiding, not erased. The voice faded again, leaving only silence. Elias sat in the dark, his fingers tight around the radio. His heart beat faster with a feeling he almost did not recognize. Hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope made you careless. He forced himself to calm down, to think. The signal was weak, broken. That meant the source was far, maybe deep underground, maybe hidden behind old structures. If he followed the right path, he might find it. Or he might walk into a trap. The aliens were clever. They studied humans, copied their voices, used tricks to lure survivors out. He had seen it before, desperate men and women running toward what they thought was salvation, only to meet cold machines waiting with sharp claws and bright fire. Elias closed his eyes, listening to his own breathing. No, this voice was different. It felt human. It carried fear, yes, but also courage. Machines never sounded like that. He packed his things again and prepared to move. The tunnels stretched endlessly, twisting, turning. Sometimes he found old posters peeling off the walls, faces of smiling people advertising concerts, movies, or vacations that would never happen. Sometimes he stepped over skeletons, their bones half buried in dust. Each time, he whispered a silent promise, "I will not waste what you lost." Then he heard it. A sound that froze his blood. Metal scraping against stone. Slow, steady, heavy. Elias turned off his light instantly. Darkness swallowed him whole. He pressed against the wall, holding his breath. The sound came closer, metal legs clicking, dragging. A faint red glow appeared down the tunnel, moving like a hungry eye. A drone. It crawled slowly, its body low, scanning the ground. Its red beam swept across the tunnel, cutting shadows apart. Elias's hand slid to the broken pipe strapped to his pack. He gripped it tight, sweat running down his forehead. The drone stopped. Its eye scanned the wall, the ground, the ceiling. For a moment, Elias thought it had found him. His heart pounded so loudly he feared it would betray him. The beam paused, then turned away. The drone moved on, legs scratching against the stone, until the sound faded into distance. Elias did not move for several minutes. Only when the silence returned did he let out his breath. He wiped the sweat from his face and forced himself to keep walking. At last, he reached a collapsed section of tunnel. Rubble blocked the way, but through a narrow crack he saw a faint light. Not the cold blue of alien machines, but warm, flickering, human. Fire. His throat tightened. He pressed his ear to the stone, listening. For a moment, nothing. Then, voices. Low, quiet, human voices. He almost laughed, almost shouted. But he held himself back. Caution was survival. He could not rush in. Slowly, carefully, he searched the rubble for a gap. He found a small opening, just enough to crawl through. As he pushed himself into the narrow space, dust filled his mouth and nose. Rocks scraped his arms. But he kept moving until he reached the other side. And then he froze. In the distance, through the dim firelight, he saw figures. Human figures. Thin, dirty, tired, but alive. A group huddled around a weak flame, whispering to each other, their faces sharp with hunger but their eyes still bright with life. For the first time in years, Elias was not alone. He stood in the shadows, trembling, afraid to step forward. What if they were not real? What if this was another trick? His heart warred with his mind, hope battling fear. One of the figures turned, their eyes lifting toward the darkness where he stood. "Who's there?" the voice called. Elias's lips parted, but no words came. The fire crackled, the group went silent, and the ruined tunnel held its breath. Elias stayed frozen in the shadows, his breath caught in his throat. The firelight painted the faces of the survivors in broken orange, flickering across their hollow cheeks and tired eyes. They looked human. They sounded human. But trust was a dangerous thing in this world. The voice came again, sharper this time. I said, "Who's there?" Elias gripped the pipe in his hand, his knuckles white. He could step forward now, reveal himself, and maybe they would welcome him. Or maybe they would scream, draw weapons, and call the machines by mistake. He had to choose carefully. The group stirred. One man picked up a long piece of sharpened metal, holding it like a spear. A woman lifted a crude torch, her eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness. Elias's mouth was dry. He had lived in silence for so long, his voice felt like a stranger inside him. Still, he forced the words out, low and rough. I'm human. The group went tense, their eyes wide. The woman with the torch raised it higher, the flames trembling. "Step out," she ordered. Slowly. Elias hesitated, then took a deep breath. He lowered his pipe, lifted his free hand to show he carried no weapon, and stepped into the light. Gasps filled the air. The survivors rose, some clutching scraps of iron, others standing back in disbelief. Elias's face was thin, his beard ragged, his clothes torn, but his eyes were alive, sharp with stubborn fire. The woman studied him closely, the torchlight flickering across her face. She was younger than Elias had imagined from her voice on the radio, maybe in her 30s, with hair tied back in a rough knot and dirt smudging her cheeks. Still, her gaze was steady, hard. "Where did you come from?" she asked. "The city," Elias said. His voice cracked from lack of use. "I've been hiding, moving, listening. I heard your signal." At that, her eyes softened, just slightly. She lowered the torch. "You heard us." Elias nodded. "You said you were still here. That humanity was not gone." I followed the voice. The group exchanged quick looks, whispers spreading among them. One old man shook his head, muttering, "It could be a trap." Another woman, thin as bone, spoke sharply. "The machines use tricks. You know that. They use voices." Elias stepped forward, his heart pounding. "I'm not a machine. I bleed. I starve. I'm just like you. If I were one of them, you'd already be dead." Silence followed. The group studied him carefully. Finally, the woman with the torch, clearly their leader, nodded. "My name is Mara," she said. "If you are truly human, then you are welcome here." The weight on Elias's chest lifted slightly. He let out a breath he did not know he was holding. For the first time in years, he was not a shadow alone in the ruins. He had found others. The survivors motioned for him to sit near the fire. Elias lowered himself onto the cold ground, the warmth of the flames brushing his skin. He felt their eyes on him, cautious but curious. "How many are you?" he asked quietly. Mara looked around at her people. "There were more," she said softly. "But now, only 16. Elias's stomach twisted. 16. Out of billions, only 16 here, clinging to life in the dark. Yet 16 was more than he had ever hoped to find. "Do you know others?" Mara asked. Elias shook his head. "I thought I was the last." Her eyes hardened again. "No. There are others. We've sent out signals, but it's dangerous. Every time we speak too long, the machines come closer. Sometimes, survivors never answer. Sometimes we hear only silence." Elias leaned forward. "Then why risk it?" Mara's voice grew firm. "Because if we stay silent, they win. They want us to believe we are gone. They want us to erase ourselves. But as long as even one voice answers, humanity still lives." The words struck Elias deep. He had lived for so long only to survive. But these people, broken and weak as they were, carried something greater. They carried defiance. The fire crackled. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to feel the warmth, not just of the flames, but of human presence. Laughter, even faint and tired, still lived here. It was fragile, but it was real. Then, suddenly, the air changed. A low hum shivered through the tunnel, vibrating the stones. Elias's head snapped up. He knew that sound. The survivors knew it too. Panic spread across their faces. Mara extinguished the torch instantly, plunging them into near darkness. "Drones," she whispered. "They've found us." The group scattered silently, grabbing weapons, pulling children close, retreating into cracks and side tunnels. Elias's pulse raced. He gripped his pipe again, his eyes burning in the dark. A red light pierced the rubble wall, sweeping across the tunnel. A machine crawled through the gap, its legs scraping, its single eye glowing like fire. Another followed. The sound of metal filled the air. The survivors pressed into shadows, silent, barely breathing. Elias stood near Mara, his heart thundering. He had survived alone by hiding, by waiting. But now he was not alone. Now, if he did nothing, these people would die. The first drone scanned the tunnel, its beam sliding across the fire pit. It paused, the glow intensifying. It had found something. Elias tightened his grip on the pipe. His muscles shook, but not from fear. From decision. He could hide again, vanish into the shadows, survive another day. Or, he could fight. Mara whispered, "Stay still. Don't move." But Elias's eyes locked on the red beam, and something deep inside him shifted. The machines had taken everything, his family, his city, his world. But here, right now, 16 lives waited in the balance. He stepped out of the shadows. The survivors gasped. The drone's red eye spun, locking onto him. It screeched, metal grinding as weapons unfolded from its sides. Elias raised his pipe high. His voice rang out in the tunnel, rough but strong. "Come for me, not them." The drone charged, its claws slicing through the air. Elias roared, swinging with all his strength. Metal met metal. Sparks burst in the dark. And for the first time, humanity struck back. The clash rang out like thunder in the tunnel. Sparks lit the darkness as Elias's pipe slammed against the drone's glowing eye. The machine shrieked, its metal body jerking back, claws scraping across the stone. For a heartbeat, silence followed. Then the drone surged forward, faster, sharper. Elias staggered, raising the pipe again. The drone's claw struck, ripping the air where his chest had been. He rolled aside, the impact shattering the floor. Shards of concrete rained down, the noise echoing like gunfire. The survivors gasped in the shadows, their faces pale in the faint firelight. Mara clenched her jaw, ready to rush forward, but her people pulled her back. "No," one hissed. "If we move, they'll see us all." But Elias did not think of hiding. His arms ached, his breath burned, but rage carried him forward. The machine's voice replayed in his head. "Erase them. Humanity is gone." The words had haunted him for years. Now, he answered with steel and fury. He struck again, the pipe bending with the force. The drone's eye cracked, light spilling like blood. The machine screamed, its sound a jagged howl. Elias pushed forward, swinging again and again, each strike fueled by years of silence, pain, and loss. Finally, the drone collapsed, sparks spilling from its body, twitching and shuddering before falling still. Smoke filled the tunnel, the sharp stench of burning wires clawing at the air. But there was no time to breathe. The second drone crawled through the rubble, its red eye glowing brighter. "Elias!" Mara hissed. He turned, sweat dripping from his face, his chest heaving. The second machine advanced, scanning, learning. It had watched the first fall. This one would not make the same mistakes. Elias tightened his grip on the bent pipe. His body screamed for rest, but his heart thundered louder. He could not stop now. Not with 16 lives behind him. The drone lunged. Elias swung, but the machine was faster. Its claw smashed the pipe aside, sending it clattering across the stone. The impact shook Elias's arm, pain shooting through his bones. He stumbled, falling to his knees. The survivors gasped, some rising, some clutching each other in fear. Mara's eyes burned in the shadows. "No," she whispered, too low for Elias to hear. The drone loomed over him, claws rising for the kill. Elias's mind raced, his body too slow to move. He thought of the voice on the radio. "We are still here. Do not give up." He thought of the billions already gone. He thought of his promise, to never surrender. His hand shot out, grabbing a shard of concrete from the floor. As the drone struck, Elias rolled and jammed the jagged stone into its joint. The machine screeched, twisting violently. Sparks erupted as its claw stalled, caught in its own gears. Elias scrambled to his feet. his eyes wild. He seized the fallen pipe, raised it high, and brought it down with everything left in him. Once. Twice. 3 times. The machine's eye shattered, its body jerking in spasms before collapsing in a burst of sparks. The tunnel fell silent again, except for Elias's ragged breathing. He stood over the ruined machines, chest heaving, arms trembling, his pipe bent and cracked in his hands. Then, slowly, the survivors emerged from the shadows. Their eyes were wide, their faces pale, but something else flickered there too, something Elias had not seen in years. "Ah!" one of the children whispered. "He killed them." Mara stepped forward, her torch still unlit, her face lit only by the glow of dying sparks. She studied Elias with steady eyes. "You fought for us," she said softly. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. "I fought, because I'm done hiding." The survivors exchanged glances. Some nodded, some smiled faintly, others simply stared. For so long, they had lived in fear, running, hiding, surviving one day at a time. Now, in one moment of fury, Elias had shown something they had almost forgotten. Humans could fight back. Mara's voice cut through the silence. "You're not just another survivor," she said. "You're proof." Elias frowned. "Proof of what?" "That we are not erased." The words sank into the group. Heads lifted. Shoulders straightened. A fire lit in their eyes, one brighter than the weak flames they huddled around. For the first time, they felt something more powerful than fear. Hope. But hope came with danger. From deep in the tunnels, a low rumble began to spread. The sound of more machines. Louder this time. Heavier. The drones Elias had killed had screamed as they died, and their cries had not gone unheard. The survivors stiffened, panic flashing in their faces. "They're coming," one muttered. Mara clenched her fists. "Then we move. Now." Elias nodded. He grabbed his pack, his bent pipe still clutched tight. He looked at the group, thin, tired, weak. They would not outrun the machines if they moved blindly. But running was better than waiting to die. The group doused the fire quickly, plunging them into darkness. Mara led the way, her hand brushing the tunnel walls. Elias walked near the back, his ears straining for the hum behind them. The sound grew louder with each step. The tunnels twisted, splitting into paths, some caved in, some blocked. Mara chose carefully, her steps quick and certain. Elias realized she had mapped these tunnels in her mind, memorized every corner. She was not only a leader. She was a guide. But the machines were faster. The hum turned into screeches, claws scraping against stone, metal echoing like a storm. Red lights began to glow faintly behind them, chasing, closing the distance. The survivors stumbled, breathless, fear pulling at their legs. Children whimpered. Old men wheezed. Elias felt his chest tighten. They would not make it far like this. Mara slowed at a fork in the tunnels. "This way," she whispered, pointing to the left. "There's a barricade up ahead. We can hide there." But Elias's eyes narrowed. The hum was not only behind them, it was ahead too. Faint, but real. "They're closing in from both sides," he said, his voice sharp. The survivors froze. Panic rippled through them. Mara's face went pale, but her jaw tightened. Elias gripped his bent pipe and stepped forward, his shadow stretching in the dim glow. His voice was low but firm. "Then we don't hide. We fight." The survivors stared at him, their fear battling with something new rising inside them. Mara's eyes met his, and for the first time, she nodded. Elias lifted the pipe high, his eyes burning. "They think we're erased," he said. "Let's show them we're still here." And in the dark tunnels, surrounded by the coming storm of machines, humanity prepared to strike back. The tunnels shook with the sound of metal. The screeches of machines echoed like thunder, bouncing from wall to wall. Red lights flickered in the distance, growing brighter with each passing moment. The survivors huddled close, fear sharp in their eyes. Some clutched scraps of iron, others held nothing but empty hands. Their bodies were weak from hunger, their hearts heavy from years of running. Yet now, with Elias standing before them, something stronger than fear sparked inside. Elias gripped his bent pipe, the metal warm from battle. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. His eyes burned, not with terror, but with determination. He had hidden long enough. Tonight, he would fight, not just for himself, but for every human still breathing. Mara moved to his side. Her voice was calm but firm. "If we stand here, we may all die. But if we run, they will catch us one by one." She looked at her people, her jaw set. "No more running. Tonight, we fight." The survivors trembled, but their fear slowly changed. Their spines straightened, their fists clenched. The hopeless whispers turned into murmurs of defiance. For so long, they had lived like shadows. Now they would rise, even if it meant falling together. Elias studied the tunnel around them. The walls were narrow, broken. That gave them a chance. The machines were fast, but they were big. If the survivors fought smart, they could hold them here. "Break the stones," Elias said quickly. "Pile the rubble. Block their path." The survivors obeyed. They smashed loose rocks, stacked broken concrete, and built a rough barricade. Their hands bled, their muscles shook, but they worked with desperate speed. Children carried smaller stones, old men dragged scraps of metal. Every hand moved, every soul helping. The hum of machines grew louder. Sparks of red light flickered closer, sharp and cruel. The survivors finished their barricade just in time. They stood behind it, clutching weapons of stone and steel, their faces pale but ready. Elias stood at the front, his pipe raised high. Mara beside him carried a jagged spear. Together they looked into the darkness, waiting. Then the first drone appeared. It crawled into view, its red eye glowing like fire. Behind it, more shadows moved, their metal claws scraping the floor. The tunnel filled with the sound of hunger and hate. The machine screeched, charging forward. It slammed into the barricade, claws ripping, beams of red light scanning. The survivors cried out, but they did not run. They threw stones, struck with iron, stabbed with broken spears. Sparks burst as blows landed, metal groaning under human hands. Elias roared, swinging his pipe with all his strength. The drone's eye shattered, its body crashing against the wall. It twitched, then fell still. The survivors gasped, their voices rising with sudden hope. But more came. 2 drones forced their way forward, smashing against the barricade. Claws tore through the stones, beams cutting across the air. The survivors screamed, but their voices carried strength now. They struck back, stabbing, throwing, slamming. Sparks lit the tunnel like fireflies. A man was pulled down, a claw slicing his side. Blood spilled, his scream echoing. Mara lunged, her spear piercing the drone's core. It screeched, collapsing, while others dragged the wounded man back. Elias fought like a storm, every strike of his pipe breaking metal, every roar filling the tunnel with human fury. His arms burned, his chest ached, but he did not stop. Not now. Not ever. The survivors followed his lead. Fear turned into rage. Rage turned into courage. Together, they fought, not as shadows, not as prey, but as humans. The drones pressed harder, their numbers growing. But every time one clawed forward, human hands pushed it back. The barricade shook, rocks falling, but the line held. At last, the tunnel fell silent. The ground was littered with broken machines, their red lights fading. Smoke and sparks filled the air. The survivors stood among the wreckage, their bodies trembling, their weapons slick with blood and oil. Then, silence. Elias lowered his pipe, his breath ragged. He looked around at the survivors. Their faces were pale, but their eyes were alight. For the first time, they had stood together. For the first time, they had beaten the machines. Mara's voice rose in the quiet. "Do you see?" she whispered, her words trembling but strong. "We can fight. We are not erased." The survivors murmured in agreement. Some wept, some laughed, some simply stared in shock. But all of them felt the same fire burning in their chests. Elias leaned against the wall, his body aching. He thought of the voice on the radio, the promise that others were still out there. If 16 survivors could fight back, what could hundreds do? What could thousands? His heart thudded with a dangerous thought. Maybe humanity was not only alive. Maybe humanity could win. But before hope could take full shape, the ground trembled. A deep rumble rolled through the tunnel, heavier than before. The survivors froze, their eyes wide. From the shadows ahead, a new light glowed. Not the small red eye of a drone. This light was larger, stronger. Mara's face went pale. "It's not a drone," she whispered. Elias's stomach tightened. The rumble grew louder, the air vibrating with the weight of something massive. A shadow filled the tunnel, huge and terrible. Metal scraped, sparks showered, and a voice deeper than thunder echoed through the darkness. "Human resistance detected. Erase completely." The survivors gasped, clutching each other. Fear returned like a knife. Elias stepped forward, his pipe trembling in his hands. His body screamed in pain, his mind shouted at him to run. But his heart burned with fire. He looked at Mara. He looked at the 16 faces that had stood beside him. And he raised his weapon. "Then come and try." The tunnel shook as the massive machine advanced, its lights blazing, its claws unfolding like swords. And humanity, small but unbroken, braced for its greatest fight yet. The tunnel shook as the giant machine stepped forward. Its claws scraped the stone, sparks falling like fire. Its body was tall enough to touch the ceiling, its lights burning white and red. The air vibrated with its voice, cold and merciless. "Human resistance detected. Erase completely." The survivors froze. Their victory against the drones felt small now, like a spark before a storm. Fear returned to their faces. Children clutched their mothers. Old men shook. The fire of hope that had burned only moments ago began to flicker. Elias gripped his bent pipe tighter. His arms ached, his chest burned, but he stood firm. He stepped in front of the group, placing himself between the machine and the survivors. Mara moved beside him, her jaw hard. "We can't fight that," someone whispered behind them. "Yes, we can," Elias said, his voice steady. His heart thundered in his chest, but his eyes never left the towering shadow. "We have to." The machine advanced. Its claws unfolded with a hiss, sharp as blades. Its eyes scanned, beams slicing across the tunnel. The barricade that had stopped the drones would not stop this. Stones cracked under its weight, dust raining from the ceiling. "Scatter!" Elias shouted. The survivors broke apart, diving into cracks and side tunnels. Mara stayed close to Elias, her spear ready, though her hands trembled. The machine screeched, slamming its claw down where they had stood. The ground split, the sound deafening. Elias rolled aside, his pipe clanging against the metal. Sparks flew, but the strike barely scratched the monster's armor. He stumbled back, chest heaving. "This thing is stronger," Mara gasped. "Then we find its weakness," Elias growled. The giant machine swung again, smashing into the walls. Rubble fell, dust choking the air. The survivors screamed in the shadows, holding each other, but Elias did not stop moving. He darted forward, striking again and again, each blow ringing like a bell against unbroken steel. The machine ignored him, its eye turning toward the huddled survivors. A beam glowed, heat rising in the air. It was preparing to fire. "No!" Elias roared. He leapt, swinging with all his strength. His pipe slammed into the glowing lens. The light flickered, the beam stuttered. The machine jerked, sparks bursting from its eye. Mara seized the chance. She lunged, driving her spear into a joint near the claw. Metal screeched as the weapon sank deep. The machine reeled back, thrashing, its voice crackling. "Resistance, illogical. Erase." It slammed its body against the wall, shaking Mara loose. She crashed to the ground, gasping. Elias rushed to her, pulling her up just as the machine's claw struck again, missing them by inches. The survivors cried out, their voices echoing. One of the men, thin and gray, picked up a shard of metal and hurled it. It clanged uselessly against the giant's armor, but his voice rose with it. "We are not gone." Another joined him, throwing a stone. Then another, swinging a broken pipe. Soon, the survivors screamed together, their fear burning into rage. They attacked with everything they had, stones, iron, even their fists. The machine staggered under the storm. Its armor held, but its focus split. Elias saw his chance. "Climb it!" he shouted. Before fear could stop him, Elias ran forward, leaping onto the machine's leg. His hands burned against hot steel, but he climbed, pulling himself higher. Sparks rained as claws struck near him, but he did not stop. "Elias!" Mara cried, but he kept going. He reached the machine's chest, where wires glowed beneath plates of armor. With a roar, he raised his pipe and smashed it down. Metal cracked, sparks exploded, wires tore. The machine shrieked, its voice broken and jagged. Elias struck again, until the pipe bent uselessly. He dropped it, grabbing loose wires with his bare hands. Electricity seared his skin, but he pulled with everything inside him. The machine convulsed, lights flickering wildly. Its claws thrashed, smashing the tunnel walls. Rocks fell, cracks split the ceiling. But Elias did not let go. "Erase this," he spat through clenched teeth. With one final scream, he tore the wires free. The machine let out a roar that shook the tunnel. Then its lights died, its body shuddered, and it collapsed, crashing to the ground like a fallen mountain. Dust and smoke swallowed everything. Elias fell with it, hitting the ground hard. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself to move. He crawled out of the dust, coughing, his hands blackened and bleeding. The survivors emerged slowly, their faces pale with shock. The giant machine lay broken, sparks twitching across its ruined body. Silence filled the tunnel, heavy and unreal. Then a child whispered, "He killed it." Voices rose, trembling, amazed. "He killed it." The survivors gathered around Elias, lifting him up. Their fear was gone. Their eyes burned with something stronger, belief. Mara stood before him, her face dirty and tired, but her eyes bright. "You did it," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "We did it. All of us." The survivors looked at one another, their hearts pounding with the same thought. If they could kill this, then maybe, just maybe, humanity had a chance. But far above the tunnels, in the night sky, more lights moved. The death of the giant machine had not gone unnoticed. Signals spread. Orders changed. And the voices of the enemy whispered again, colder than before. Human resistance confirmed. Deploy full erasure. The war was not over. It was only beginning. The tunnel was silent except for the hiss of sparks from the dead machine. Dust drifted in the air like ash after a fire. The survivors stood around Elias, their faces pale but burning with something they had not felt in years. They had seen death many times, but tonight they had seen something greater. They had seen a human strike down a monster. Mara placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. "You've shown us what we forgot," she whispered. "That we can fight." Elias's body ached, his arms weak, his skin burned where the machine's wires had seared him. But he stood tall. He looked at the survivors, 16 tired souls who had once only wanted to hide. Now their eyes were alive. Hope glowed where fear had ruled. But hope was fragile. And the silence did not last. From deep in the tunnels came a sound like thunder rolling through stone. Heavy. Endless. Not one machine this time, but many. The survivors froze. Children clung to mothers. Old men cursed under their breath. The fire of courage flickered as the walls shook. "They're coming," Mara said, her face pale. Elias listened. The sound was different now. Not drones. Not one war machine. A full force. The aliens had heard. They knew humans had risen from the shadows. And now they meant to crush them all. Elias's voice cut through the fear. Then we fight again. The survivors looked at him, torn between courage and despair. We can't face an army, one whispered. We'll die here. Then we die standing, Elias said firmly. Not crawling. Not hiding. If they want to erase us, let them see us first. Let them see what it means to be human. His words struck like fire in dry wood. The survivors straightened. Their hands gripped weapons tighter. Fear remained, but something stronger began to rise with it. Mara nodded. He's right. We fight. Together. They moved quickly, preparing the tunnel. Stones were piled into walls, traps were set with broken wires and metal scraps. Children carried rocks, old men sharpened steel, women tied rags into torches. Every hand moved, every heart racing. They were no longer just survivors. They were soldiers of the last war. The rumble grew louder. The walls shook. Red light began to glow in the distance, a sea of it. The enemy was coming. Elias stood at the front, pipe in hand, his body bruised and bloody. Mara stood beside him with her spear. Behind them, 16 humans waited, their eyes burning with the same fire. The air grew heavy. The glow brightened. And then the machines came. Drones crawled first, dozens of them, their eyes blazing red. Behind them rolled heavier machines, claws sharp, voices echoing in cold unison. Erase them. Erase humanity. The survivors did not run. They screamed. They threw rocks, hurled fire, stabbed with sharpened steel. The tunnel erupted into chaos, sparks, fire, screams, and roars. Elias swung his pipe like a storm, smashing eyes, breaking metal, blood mixing with oil. Mara fought like lightning, her spear striking fast and sharp. The survivors moved together, not shadows anymore, but a single flame burning in the dark. The drones fell, one by one, crushed under human rage. But more came. Claws ripped through the barricade. Beams scorched the walls. The tunnel filled with smoke, choking and hot. Elias's chest burned, his arms weak, but his eyes never dimmed. He shouted over the roar of battle, his voice carrying through the chaos. We are not gone. The survivors echoed him. Their voices shook the tunnel louder than the machines. We are not gone. For every scream, for every strike, the machines pressed harder. Their numbers were endless, their strength overwhelming. But the humans did not break. They fought with the fury of a species that refused to vanish. A great claw swung down, tearing the barricade apart. The survivors stumbled, nearly crushed. Mara fell, her spear snapping in half. Elias caught her, pulling her up. His pipe was bent, nearly broken, but he raised it again. The largest machine forced its way forward, its voice booming. Last humans detected. Erase now. Elias's eyes blazed. His voice rose in defiance, stronger than fear, stronger than pain. Then erase this. He hurled his broken pipe into the machine's glowing core. At the same time, survivors lit their last torches, throwing them onto the wires and oil that had spilled across the tunnel. Flames erupted. Fire spread like a beast, racing along the floor, climbing the machines. Sparks turned to explosions. Metal screamed. The tunnel shook as fire swallowed everything. Elias grabbed Mara's hand, dragging her back. The survivors ran, coughing, choking, but alive. Behind them, the machines burned, their voices breaking into static as they collapsed in the firestorm. The tunnel roared with flame. The earth itself seemed to cry out. And when the noise finally faded, only silence remained. The survivors stumbled into the open air at last. The ruined city stretched before them, the night sky filled with alien lights. Above, enemy ships drifted like cold stars, watching. Mara collapsed to her knees, coughing, her face streaked with ash. The others fell around her, exhausted but alive. Elias stood tall, his body broken, his hands blackened, his weapon gone. He stared at the ships above, his chest rising and falling. The enemy would come again. They would send more. They would never stop. But neither would humanity. He raised his voice to the sky, rough and raw, but strong enough to carry into the night. We are still here. The survivors echoed him, their voices joining, rising, shaking the ruins around them. We are still here. The ships above glowed, silent, listening. And in that moment, one truth filled the broken world: humanity was not erased. Humanity had risen. Humanity would fight. No matter the cost.